Now, I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news, and I think most of us know what's about to happen. Winter is coming. What do we do with all of our lovely houseplants? Stick around with me, and I will tell you everything that I have learned over the years in order to minimize the damage that fall and winter will have on houseplants. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yes, I'm so sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but at least for all of us in the Northern Hemisphere, winter is coming. For everybody in the Southern Hemisphere, we are all super jealous. Granted, if I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm personally not super jealous because I've had a very busy summer with my plants, and I have been looking forward to the slowdown that's about to hit. That's just a me thing. I don't think that everybody's necessarily in the same boat as me. But yes, I know everybody online is going to be doing videos about kind of preparing for winter, and I was debating on whether or not I should do this video at all because there's going to be so much content out there about this. But I have listened to all of you on several videos where I've made similar comments where you're just like, we don't care, Memo. We want to know what you do as well. And I'm just like, okay, so this is what I do. And this is what I've learned over the years in terms of preparing my collection to minimize the damage of winter. And I will hold your hand whilst I say this, because a lot of people might not be saying this. You will have damage and losses that are going to happen in the winter, even if you do absolutely everything right for the average person, unless you are the ultimate plant whisperer and you are living literally in a tropical environment. There's going to be some issues that you're going to have to deal with, and you probably will lose some plants. I am sorry to tell you this, but it's not all doom and gloom. There are things that you can do, at least in my experience, that could set you up for success, and that is generally what I do in my care. Keep in mind, full transparency, I will still have damage to my plant, crispiness to my plants, root rot, potentially some losses, but a vastly minimized level because I do a lot of the things that I'm just going to go about in this check. So broad strokes, I want to talk about pest management. I want to talk about light levels and grow lights. Watering, both for your tropical plants and for your arid plants. And by that, I mean your succulents and cacti. And other tips and tricks that I've learned along the way in order to minimize some of these issues. So, first thing I want to be talking about is going to be, and it's going to be a nice easy one, start us off, and it's a warning and more of a please do this right now. Consider this video your moment to do this. Stop watering your cacti right now. Stop it. Anything that has been watered recently, that is the last time it's going to get watered now until spring. If you were planning on watering your cacti, have a look and see if it's dried off. And I would say leave it. Leave it now until spring. Nothing bad will happen to your cacti. They will need this rest period to happen during the winter months. Slight caveat to that is if they're in a very bright south-facing window and they're directly above a radiator and they're drying out a bit too much, if and only if during the winter months you see that it is wrinkling way too much and you're a bit worried about the plant, a small soupçon of a sprinkle of water on the thing. Do not drench the entire thing, just enough to kind of keep it going until the springtime where you will start rewatering, and you will do that gradually as well. Same thing applies now for all of your succulent plants. This is the time where you're going to really be pulling back on the watering. And I'll give you an understanding, because I've got my plant care app that is on my phone, and I always check this, and this is the time of the year where I start adjusting. So before, I might have certain succulent plants that I would check. Remember, it's always check. It's not guaranteed that it needs watering. Even in the growing months, even in spring and summer, check once every 5 to 7 days to see if that plant needs watering. Invariably, if it's been warm enough and sunny enough, it will need watering. At this point, I am checking it and going, is it bone dry? No, wait, adjust that time for the winter and go from 5 days to 7 days to maybe 10 days, 15 days. And with a lot of my succulent plants, I will wait not only until it is bone dry, but it stays bone dry for 2 or 3 days at a minimum before I re-water it. And actually, a lot of the times, even with your succulent plants, you will find that actually you go from watering it or checking it for water once every 5 to 7 days in the summer to maybe only doing it once a month in the winter months. So bear that in mind. Thank me later. Generally speaking, these plants do not do very much when it comes to the winter months. The only caveat to this, and I will see if I can add pictures here and here, there is a conophytum that I have that goes into active growth in the winter. That plant, I do what I've just talked about now in the summer, and I flip it on its head and treat it like it's like all the others, like I would do with everything else in the summer, in the winter. Same thing goes for, oh, and I can never remember the spiral plant that I have that looks like a little onion. I'll put a picture here and the name. That does nothing. It loses all of its leaves in the summer. It rests during the summer, and it's only just now, and you'll see from the picture, starting to get its leaves again. It goes into active growth in the winter time. So double check with a lot of your plants, but a lot of the time it's going to be that they are going to be resting over the winter months. Slight difference between cacti and succulents. Cacti, generally, if it's a true cactus, it will need to be dry for all of those months. If it is a succulent, it might need watering still, but really, really, really infrequently. So take this video and take this as your reminder to stop watering. Right, and let's talk pest management. Pest management is still key. So predatory satchels and loose predators, and a whole host of other things that you could be doing. So, and I've done an entire video series on the different pest types, and I think I might have them in a playlist. If not, I'll create one and add it somewhere at the top of this video so you can go and see that individually. But from my experience, things that tend to slow down, not always necessarily disappear, especially if you're keeping your house warm enough, is thrips. So you can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief, not a full sigh of relief, and just kind of, you don't have to deal with them quite as much now in the winter. However, the flip side of that is spider mites love this time of the year, especially if you're in a very warm house that might be on the drier side and not as humid. They thrive, I find, at least in my experience, in that environment. So be very vigilant for spider mites, especially in your winter, and especially with plants that will, by and large, be sensitive to them or are known spider mite magnets. I am looking at the calatheas and the alocasias and colocasias, especially because both the calatheas and the alocasias and colocasias, generally, unless you haven't done too much for their lighting and they're still in the same place that they were in the spring and summer, aren't going to be doing too much. And these pests will attack them even more so at this time of the year, I found. Mealybugs, for me, it's a year-round issue. So, things to remember if you're doing predatory insects. It is also that those insects need to survive in the temperatures that you've got in your space, and also what type of predator you can get delivered. So, I've got the Ansomite, and I think it's Ansomite Plus, and I'll see if I can find the scientific name and put it here. I know not everybody can get predatory insects. I am saying this predominantly for the people that can. These are more cold tolerant, so these will be better year-round, especially this is where they really shine in the winter months. These don't do so great when it's blisteringly hot in the summer. Same thing goes for anything that you're going to be doing as a loose predator is A, will you be able to buy it? Because even if they can survive in your space, they still need to be shipped to you. And the good retailers of predatory insects will not ship predatory insects that are sensitive to the cold when it's freezing cold outside, because you will be getting dead insects and you will be very unhappy and you will be wanting your money back. So they don't generally do that. But I think one of the ones that I can still see come up even at this time of the year, and we're still in autumn, is the larval stages of the lacewings. So now would be the time for me to stock up on these and get them going before it gets arctically cold and I can't even get these sent to me. So that's one thing to remember. The spray, nobody stops you from spraying your plants. Nobody stops you from actually just hosing things down with water. So the thing that you should start doing now is, when you can, because you're not running around doing an insane amount of watering because everything is thirsty all the time like they are in the summer, is the time to be slowly taking your plants one at a time whenever you've got some time and taking them to the shower when they need watering, because you're going to be drenching that soil anyway, and spraying them down with the shower nozzle basically, just to make sure that you'll do two things. It will, one, clear most of the leaves from any form of dust, and this is a good thing to start getting into habit with. I know none of us generally will sit there and clean all of the leaves, but this will serve that purpose as well. It will at least clean some of those leaves, because this links into the topic I'm going to be talking about when it comes to light. That layer of dust is making it even harder for that plant to photosynthesize, especially at this time of the year where the light levels are lower as well. So it's a double whammy for that plant. It's just that there's not enough light, and also I'm under a layer of dust. I can barely get any light to photosynthesize with. So spray down your plants. That's a nice non-chemical way of doing it. If you want to be doing the more kind of organic pesticides or even systemic pesticides, follow the instructions on the bottle. Be very careful with systemics. I mean, at this time of the year, you're not going to be doing anything outdoors, so there's less of a risk of that. But as a lot of people always say with systemic pesticides, it could still get into the water system, and that still also causes issues. But be very vigilant is what I'm trying to say of pests. You are not done. You are never done with pests. It's just a different flavor of pests and how you deal with them in the winter. Now let's talk lighting. I touched on it briefly, and I've actually got something that was sent to me to trial out by the wonderful guys at GrowGang. And GrowGang, I did a video where I was kind of mentioning one of their lights before, and it's done really well because I've got it directly above my bird of paradise that needs as much light as humanly possible to do the best that it can do in a very dark corner that I have, and it's done exceptionally well. Do I want to bump it up? Yes. And they reached out to me and said, look, we're launching a new thing. Do you want us to send you one for free? This isn't a sponsored video, by the way. They didn't even ask me to feature this in a video. I said, you know what? I'm actually doing this video that I'm going to be talking about things like grow lights this weekend. Perfect. Send it over. I can do a little mini unboxing, and that's unboxing because I've had to just open up to make sure that it arrived okay. And this is a grow light that they have that is a brighter type of grow light as well. So as always, they had some great packaging that was happening there. And this is the Pianta 30. So I have got one of their other Piantas, and I can't remember which one it is. Give me a second, it's behind you there. So yes, this is going to be brighter because I'm looking at the other Pianta. The other Pianta is 18 watts. This is 13 watts, 30 watts. It has a lifespan of 50,000 hours. It isn't dimmable. It's an E27 bulb type, and the color temperature is about 3,400 kelvins. So this is supposed to be a very powerful yet natural warm glow of a light. And as always, their packaging is fantastic. You can kind of see that it comes in really, really, really secure. And oh wow, yeah, it is bigger than their previous one. Oh, that's a beast. That's a beast. That is a great, great light. And you can generally see, so all of these kind of metal tines that you can kind of see on there, these tend to work. Anybody who's like into their electronics, these work as a heat sink, which means this is such a bright light that it can get a bit hot. So bear that in mind. And these are to dissipate the heat. And let me see if I can actually show it to you in comparison with the other light that I've got from them, and you can kind of see and compare how they both stack up against each other. So I've unscrewed the other light. That is the standard, the kind of old Pianta that I had from them, and that is the other one. I think you can kind of see the difference in size, basically, and this is meant to be a lot brighter. What I will be doing is, after I finish filming this video, I'll kind of set it up above my bird of paradise, or somewhere else, because I think the one above my bird of paradise, I might not be able to get it in because it's on a very specific fixing. If not, I will set this up somewhere else and show you quite how bright this is. But I am thoroughly looking forward to trialing this grow light because I've had such great success with the original Pianta. Absolutely stonking amazing grow light. But yes, grow lights in general are going to be your friend when it comes to the winter months. And I know grow lights are not for everybody, and I'll touch on kind of more natural lighting solutions. But if you want to do grow lights, there's a whole different host of things. There's things like the Pianta light bulbs, and I will generally always go for the kind of more full spectrum natural light bulbs, because if you put them somewhere in your house, they're not purple. I'm not going to go on about the purple lights. We've all had the purple lights. Purple lights are cheap. They don't do as well. Why bother? But we all have to tick that box when we're first starting off. These are better because they just look like any other light in your house. They're just very, very bright. This one specifically is meant to be very, very bright. I mean, the other one is also very, very bright. So I love their lights. Can you tell? So it's always a good idea. And the other thing that I would say is there is an app. There's a very specific app that I think you can get on both Android and a Apple phones, as it's, which is something called Photone, and I'll put it at the top there. That to me has been one of the most accurate apps that I can get as a light meter. If you can't get that on the Apple App Store, there's going to be other ones that you can do on there, but I'd say highly, highly recommended. Check it out and see. So for instance, what you will do is you'll use your app, you'll go and you use the front sensor, so the front camera sensor, and put it up against a light, kind of somewhere where the plant gets the kind of light that it needs, even if it's only getting it for an hour each day. Try to see what that measurement is and replicate that with the grow light. The way that you do that with grow lights is, this one isn't dimmable, some of them are dimmable, so you can check, put your phone, check underneath it where the leaves are. So let me see if I can get a plant so I can show you. So if the leaves are here and the light is here, what you want to be doing with your phone in terms of measuring is you want to put it at leaf level of the tallest plant underneath that grow light and see what it's reading. Also bear in mind that if it's reading exactly the same level as what was kind of as what you've measured by the window, it means if that plant grows ever so slightly, it's going to be getting even more light. So bear that in mind. Sometimes you might need to go just below that in order to give it enough light, but to give it a bit of space to grow. That's a big tip that not a lot of people say. It's just like, just do it there. And I'm just like, what happens when it grows? And then it starts burning because it's too close. Just a tiny bit lower and you should be fine. Same thing goes, and the app is going to be really useful even for the people that are not going to do things like grow lights. So take the measurement in an ideal world, and maybe save this as the back of your mind for next year. Spring and summer, take measurements of like some of your windows and what light levels they're getting. Also note how many hours the lights are on. So that's the important thing, is if you're going to be using something like grow lights, they need to be on for X amount of time. It's not just how much the intensity of the light is, but for how long it's getting that intensity. And you're going to need to play around and adjust and see what it's going to do or not do. So the reality is, until you kind of really start playing around with it, sometimes you're not going to get as much growth or any growth, but the plant is going to be okay, still doing better than not having any grow light. And if you kind of over calibrate, you might get a bit of leaf burn, and then just adjust. Move the plant lower from the light, or move the light higher, or if it's dimmable, dim the light. All of these things will drastically help you. Same thing goes if you are growing in a window, try to replicate that light. Maybe move things closer to the window. Things that were slightly further back are probably not going to be getting enough light, and make sure that they're getting enough light for enough hours of the day. Let's move on to heat. And heat is an interesting one when it comes to the winter, because I tried something last year and it worked well for me. I'm not saying that you need to do the same thing. Hear me out. So everything that was in my house got regular household heat, absolutely no problem. In my conservatory, and I know not everybody has a conservatory, and I do know a lot of people that do want conservatories. I highly encourage you, if you're getting a conservatory in order to grow plants like me in it, reach out to me or anybody else who has done it before and just ask us really briefly, like, what's the top 5 or 10 things you need to know before you do it? Trust me, and I know this is going to sound a bit arrogant, but I wish I had something like that when I was starting off. Trust me, gold information. Like, there's certain things that we can very quickly tell you, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. Like, the easiest one I can give you as an example is I have got the strongest dehumidifier I can get running in this space all hours of the day that I am awake. And it's still only dropping the humidity now to 78%. You will not need a humidifier in something like a conservatory, generally speaking. You will probably, depending on how many plants you've got as well, you will probably need a dehumidifier. See? Difference there. But heat. Heat in this space last winter, because I didn't want to spend a fortune on heating this space, because obviously it's all surrounded by glass. This could also be in some of your rooms in your house that you might not want to necessarily heat because you don't spend a lot of time on them, and you're either trying to budget down or you don't want to waste the fuel to heat up those rooms. Move some of your plants that appreciate colder temperatures in those locations. I mean, in this one, I've got a lot of plants that don't always appreciate the lower temperatures, but actually last year I pushed them to their limits, and at the lowest point of the day, which was nighttime, this space dropped to 15 to 16 degrees Celsius. The critical mass for me was like when it got down to 14.8, and I was like, no, this needs adjusting ever so slightly. Like, we're pushing the boat a bit too much at that point. Everything survived. I had no problem with any plants having cold damage. I also didn't mind it, and this might be something that you might want to try if you get a bit overwhelmed with watering and you're looking forward to the winter to tone down the watering. You will need even less water then, because it's a slightly cooler environment. So bear that in mind. So any of the plants that might appreciate the cooler temperatures are going to be things from the higher altitudes. Granted, they also appreciate a bit of humidity. So with those ones, if you're going to put them in those spaces, give them some humidity around them. Not necessarily always just running a humidifier in there, but maybe put them in a propagation box or the plastic baggy method around them. They will still appreciate the cold, but those higher levels of humidity and certain things like cold, the plants that are from the higher altitudes that appreciate the colder temperatures will really like surprise you with some amazing new growth. If you're growing anything that has blooms like orchids that are from cooler temperature areas, they'll kind of basically give you the most amazing flower show as well. So bear that in mind. Temperature is an interesting one. By and large, if you're growing in a household condition, whatever you've got your house set to should be fine for most plants. The reality is, unless you, and most people wouldn't be too comfortable, they would probably be cold if their houses were under 16, 15 degrees Celsius. Your plants won't be happy either. It's very, very simple. So just bear that in mind. The other thing as well that I have found has worked, and it works in this space, it could work in your household, especially if you're trying to like save some money. There are certain things, and I'll see if I can find a picture, and I've talked about this in other videos before, that you put behind a radiator that's like, it's kind of a reflective kind of bubble wrap. It's like a mirrored bubble wrap, and you put it between the radiator. If the radiator's here and the wall is here, you put it in the space between, and it helps to reflect some of that heat back into the space rather than the heat being lost into the wall. Not massively expensive. It might be a bit of an investment if you're going to do it on a few radiators, but I've still got mine 3-4 years later, and it's still doing amazingly well. The other thing for me, and this is not going to be the same for everybody, but if anybody's growing in a similar space to this, the dehumidifier that I have, I cannot remember, I don't think it's a condenser, I think it's something else, and I'll put the name there. That pumps out kind of slightly warmer air as well, so that helps to keep the temperature kind of at a good, comfortable level for most of these plants, especially during the day. And you also need to remember that a lot of your plants, depending on the room, you might not be heating it all day long if you're in the office and things like that, but actually if they're getting light into that room, it will maintain the temperature to a reasonable level. The one thing that you probably can't see any at this particular angle, but I've still got all of my fans going. Even in the winter, that does not change. You need airflow in your space. So let's touch a bit now and kind of in wrapping up things, watering, semi-hydro, reservoirs, all of these things. Let me start with the reservoirs really quickly. Again, my experience, your experience might vary. Do let us all know in the comments down below. But the moment last year and this year as well that I have started to not keep water in my water reservoirs for my semi-hydro plants is the moment that they did better. They still grew consistently in the winter and there was a lot less rot, losses, all of these things. Essentially, I let the reservoirs go dry. There is a handful of plants that I've realized are super thirsty even in the winter and they will maintain their reservoirs. But if a reservoir, I'm trying to find something that, there we go. So if this entire thing is, to say the pot was sitting here, but there's about that much that sits of water reservoir at the bottom, and that's how much I would have in the summer, and this is a thirsty plant, I would halve that for the winter. Still give it a reservoir, but less of one, because it's still going to take longer to get through that reservoir. The other thing that we need to remember about reservoirs is, especially in the winter, let the reservoir between waterings go dry. Lechuza Pond's kind of instructions on their website say this, and they can be very, very true. You need to let it dry out between waterings, basically. And that's the thing, and then you water again and flush it and fill it in. But with all of your other plants, start reducing. Start adjusting your timings. As I was talking before, if it's every 5 days, it might now be every 10 days, every 15 days, every 30 days. There will be an adjustment that is needed on your plants. And I'll quickly touch on fertilizer. Fertilizer, there are some people that say do not fertilize at all in the winter. I still fertilize a bit in the winter, a tiny bit. Like if I'm doing a half strength during the summer, I will drop that down to a quarter strength in the winter. And we need to remember that a lot of our plants in the winter is when they are laying down the roots. Even though there's no growth happening at the top where all the leaves are, they are laying down the roots in order to be ready for that growing season. And if you don't give it a chance to get some of that, those nutrients from whatever growing media you've got in the winter, you're likely to have less spectacular growth. It's still going to get growth. It's still going to be the growing season in the spring and summer, but it might be less than what you could have expected if you just gave it a tiny bit of fertilizer. Obviously, things like caladiums, colocaceas, alocasias, if they've gone down to a corm, they don't need fertilizing. But everything else, a touch of fertilizer will go a long, long way. But yes, those are the topics that I wanted to touch on. I can do more if you wanted. Let me know if you want a part 2 of this, and I'll give you my more nuanced tips and tricks as well. But yes, tell me, what did you think? Do you do some of these things? Do you don't? Do you do something different? Let us all know down below and let's have that conversation. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.